All-time highs have just struck the market once again, especially for the Dow and ES, the S&P 500. Now, the Nasdaq, it's on its way back to those highs, and I'm here to tell you there's a few stocks that are going to absolutely probably destroy. If you want to see those equities specifically, just go to the end of the video. You can look at all the stocks I'm liking and those charts. But if you want to understand what's actually happening in the market, then kind of pay close attention. Let's jump right into it. So today you actually had Powell going over everything and answering some hard-hitting questions. Now, the factor here that was dangerous was PPI and CPI were flat out terrible. They were bad. They were terrible. They couldn't be worse, arguably, over the past 2 months. So the expectation was maybe you might hear Powell say some bad stuff. That's why Bitcoin pulled back. That's why the Nasdaq was pulling back. And ultimately, the markets in general going into today were pulling back for the one time over the last 2 months, right? It's like you've been moving up, and what could really bring us down, right? So when we look at what's happening here, Powell kind of answered your major questions, and that's what we have to attack now. So we all saw the meeting if you weren't paying attention. The biggest thing that was coming out of this is Powell said nothing negative, but then you jump into a little bit further. Now, what he said going into this was we want to be careful about what's happening with a go slow approach with rate cuts. And he affirmed down here that they are going for 3 rate cuts on the year. This was basically affirmed by Fed members in their projections on the year, and data hadn't changed this. They also upgraded their outlook for economic growth, projecting a slightly slower progress on inflation over the course of this year. Some of you may hear that and think, oh, a slower approach, but overall they still said we're gonna cut rates and that's what's gonna happen. Now, what do we know about that? They're gonna cut rates. They're probably not gonna raise them once again. You've already raised them literally like to infinite and beyond. And now you're coming to the point of where is this gonna affect the overall market? Now, again, some of you like to say, well, in previous cases, when the Fed cuts rates, guess what happens? The market goes down. That's because of the context of why they are cutting those rates. They're usually cutting rates because something isn't going well, like growth is slowing down or the market is showing distress. Because traditionally you raise, then you lower, then you raise, and then lower, lower, lower. And that's kind of how it goes. Over the past 2 years, you only raised. There was no lowering. There was no slowdown. It was only raising rates. And so right now you have a buildup of overall demand for taking these loans. You have banks that need this as well. And what's going to happen when this rate cut does come into effect is you're going to see money pour back into the market. And that's what's being priced in right now. And again, just from the Fed's overall statement, as you can see here, we zoom in. Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a solid pace. Surprise, surprise. Recent job gains have remained strong and unemployment rate has remained low. Inflation has eased over the past year, but remains elevated. Again, no major concerns. That's the biggest point there. But then we move on a little bit further. We'll come back to the Fed, but we look further and we see NVIDIA. And this has to be a broad subject that we need to talk about. NVIDIA continues to really reach and shoot for the stars with overall projections. Today, they basically declared that the chip giant is not only the go-to firm for AI as of today, but also the key for the future of tech. We've gone over this quite a bit over the past few days, but their new Blackwell GPU is literally like 2 times the price of their other GPUs, and the revenue and margins are even better. So again, if you thought they couldn't make any more money, yeah, NVIDIA just got all the sweeter. On top of that, you look at some competitors and people in the space like Micron. They came out today. They were expected to still be negative on their EPS, but guess what? They smashed at 0.42, well in the range of profitability. Revenue also surprised by 10%. Really important that we notice this and pay close attention, because we go to NVIDIA, well, guess what's happening here in the after hours? NVIDIA is moving back to the upside and getting some more of that continuation. I think it's almost a matter of time until NVIDIA does push into 1,000. If it gets above 925, I think it's all but guaranteed at that point. Do your own research. That's just my overall opinion here. Now, going into the remainder of this week, we look at some key data and statistics from our friends at Edgeful. The link is down below if you're interested. Now, we know Thursdays are traditionally the second best days of the week, going into potentially Mondays, which don't really move that much. So we usually get some indecisive Mondays and Tuesdays due to rates or data that comes out, and then Thursdays and Fridays kind of finish us strong. But this is where things get even better. We look at what's happening as far as high and low close based on weekdays. So we know that typically the peak on the S&P 500 comes on Fridays. So I'm not going to tell you that Thursday and Friday are going to run ballistic, but based on the data, it looks like you're going to have a pretty good next 2 days. So definitely take advantage of the opportunity while it's in front of you. Then you also go into volume, and I believe this is one of the biggest things that you have to look at, is volume typically trends to the upside over the course of the week as well, and that's what you want to see. Thursday and Friday closing strong with increase in high volume. Not only are those days typically green, but they also bring you the highs of the week. And it seems like this is just going to continue to happen time and time again. Again, Mondays are slow, Tuesdays are kind of slow, Wednesdays are okay, but Thursdays heat up, and then Fridays, well, they make us all of our money. That's been the going trend, again, over the past year, and what we're paying close attention to. Etch will link is down below to check them out. Now we go into the charts, and this is what has to get you excited. This is what has to get your loins absolutely oiled up, lubed up, ready to party. Now we zoom out to around the daily, and when we zoom out to the daily, let's really quickly get rid of this bottom indicator so it's a little bit cleaner here for us. But as we look at what's taking place here. Let's also get rid of the VWAP and the 9 EMA. And as you look here, things do get interesting. Now, Nasdaq hasn't even broken all-time highs, which were established back on March 8th. This is where, again, I think you have to pay close attention, because ES is there. The S&P 500, the SPY, I'll go over here in a second. You're at all-time highs. And this is where things get even more interesting, which we covered yesterday. Dow, again, at all-time highs. We've been covering the higher lows that were established, and you went bananas over the past 24 hours. So again, SPY, as you look here, again, pushing up. Sorry, this is my demonstration of a bear trend versus a bullish trend, just for people as well. You can see SPY is going crazy. I think you'd be foolish to not anticipate a further move to the upside. One thing that I was calling out and trying to, point, for an example for you guys as well, was when you zoom out on the weekly chart, right? Look at how much further we're still up here. Go look at Qs as well, way above previous all-time highs. Very bullish structure. If you go back to previous cases of when you dip or have massive dips and you break previous all-time highs, I'm just saying the party doesn't usually stop at 3-4%. Just saying. Just for instance, in 2020, 2021, you ran up 28% on the Qs right there. The next run that you had back here, when you eventually broke and mounted above that, you mounted it right here at 191. You ran up 23%. This was back in 2019. You did have some consolidation, but it still is what it is. Again, you come back here in 2018, and I'm just going to go time and time again so you can see. If you don't agree, I don't really care. Do what you want to do. You had one pull, you had a little bit of a pullback, but you ended up running, and I'll be generous, at least 6%. And then don't let me get started back here in 16, 2008, etc., because the numbers get crazy. So I'm just saying, when we look at this market, the greatest pullback of all time, shout out to Michael Jordan, Jim Cramer, and everyone else that called out some of the greatest plays of all time. I'm talking sports and stocks right now. But you're breaking, mounting, and getting the continuation. But then you go into futures, right? Then you go into futures, and I think this is where things get even crazier. So what I want to do really quick is just hide this, right? And just for instance, look what happened here on Nasdaq. And this is why I say pay attention to futures. Look at that high right there. This was your previous all-time high. If we just look on the right-hand side, all you're doing is mounting that previous high. Mounting, rocket launching. That's what's happening. And then we go a step further in DXY and what's happening on broad markets. And DXY is consolidating, in my opinion, getting ready to just fall down a cliff as well. We go over yields, which were a red flag, but again, these things look prepared to start dropping as well. If the yields are getting below 4%, you already know the story. You already know what to do. It's time to hammer. It's time to buy. It's time to tell everyone at the Thanksgiving table. Guess what I did this year before summer? I went long. That's what you're going to be looking for when you get below 4% on yields as well. And these are all overall good things that are taking place now, right? Everything that we want to see from a risk on, risk off standpoint is in the clear. IWM as well, getting ready to blast off and break through highs once again and start your, ascension, right, towards 235 and all-time highs as well. And this is where things are going to get crazy, is when you start to break out here on IWM with riskier assets, is can you finally get that love? Now, I get it. I'm probably going crazy, and this might be a little bit faster paced than what I usually do here, but I do want to say, when we look at what's happening with IWM, we look at what's happening with markets as a whole, it's very interesting. And the biggest thing here is what Powell is saying regarding rates. And again, one thing that we should have taken notes from last year was during the banking crisis. Remember, the Nasdaq moved up, but the Dow and ES stayed sideways? And what did we say going into summer? We said, if banks, if the Dow, if those weak names from the banking crisis and things along those lines start to get strength, we're going to start flying. And what happened from May basically into July? The stock market went ballistic. It went crazy. It was awesome. You had a pullback into November, but then it did it again. And that's what's taking place right now, is you're getting every market moving up in sync. People want to say, guess what? It's just the Mag 7. It's just NVIDIA. It's just this name and that name. It's not the case anymore. We look at the major Dow names. We look at Caterpillar. We look at banks breaking out, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. I can go on a laundry list. It's not just tech. It's everything now. But this is where things will get crazy, is when IWM and small caps start to rally as well. Because once that happens, again, we saw what happened in 2021. Money just dumped back into the market. But what did we say in the beginning of the video would have to take place before money could dump back into the market? You're going to have to get those interest rates start to cut. One, how's that going to happen? Yields drop, and then you also get the rates cuts from the Fed, right? And that's what's going to happen in the market, in my opinion. You're going to be looking at the real estate market, which is going to heat up once we cut those rates. You're going to have a flood of buyers like we did last year and at the beginning of this year when rates dropped, and it's going to happen quick. So these are very important things. And what we said in the last video is, fortunately for the market, going to take place, it seems like. They have to map out the roadmap for cutting rates. And we knew if they planned that out, if they came out with a neutral stance, that's it. The market would love it. And you got exactly what you wanted. And this is what we're seeing right now. Let's get to equities and let's talk about the big opportunities. Start off with some of the cheaper options right now before we get to the bigger plays. And so it'll only get better and better, like me at night. What can I say? You're welcome, Ali. I'll be your husband soon. Again, so what we look at here is what's happening with Apple. Now, Apple, the biggest thing that you're watching here is really, really simple, okay? The 200 SMA on the daily. Very simple. Above the 200 SMA, I am extremely bullish on Apple. Now, we already know what's happening with Google. We already know that they're trying to implement them to their iPhone. They're trying to innovate. They're doing AI, this, that. They're in the step of the right direction. I do love Apple. I like what they're doing, but I'd be a fool to tell you that it's not risky at this moment, okay? So you want to see us get above 183.8 or wherever the 200 SMA is in the next few days as well. Be watching that. If you want to grab it down here, it's a little bit riskier. I'd probably take a little bit of profits at 180 and then re-add positions once we mount above the 200 SMA. Know that right there. Now, Google, and again, it's going to get better. Just stay with me. Google, your previous all-time high from 2022 was right here, and you broke it the other day, and then you back down, right? So you had the big push up back here, I believe in January. Yeah, you broke down, and then you pushed back up, which was like a day or two ago, Monday, and then you drop back down. So what you're looking at here on Google is simple. If you can mount above the key level, get above 151.5 and push to the upside, you're golden, you're good, you're happy. Happy Easter. Yeah, we all the works, right? You're happy if you get above that. But before that, it's high risk. Not willing to go long until you get above the 151 level. Okay, now I have to talk about it. It's, the elephant in the room, it's NVIDIA. It's my baby boy. It's Jay's baby boy. It's absolutely gorgeous, right? And again, if you're not following on Twitter, I don't know what you're doing. I try to give you as much free content as possible, but this is one of those names that I keep screaming and we keep saying. I told you about Meta on Twitter. I told you about NVIDIA. Again, absolutely love it. Okay, so again, going into NVIDIA. This is this chart gets me so excited. Now, number one, IV is getting destroyed. That's the best case scenario. You had the NVIDIA event, nothing really happened but a dip opportunity. After that, they're bouncing back up. You're getting above 900. I'm telling you right now, if you get above 925, 920, like 4 right here, in my opinion, the all-time high, the 1000 push happens quick, fast, strong, and aggressive on NVIDIA. Love it a lot. Would be paying very close attention to it. AVGO. I like AVGO a lot. It bounces your key level 1231. You're trying to get back above 1280. Above 1295, you have to get back above like roughly 1300, but I think you can start pushing back into highs very easily. Watch them as well. I'm telling you guys, I don't always get this excited, but when I do, sometimes some good stuff happens, okay? So again, I always say this too. It always depends on what happens with the futures and how that market moves as well. So don't just YOLO into these names. Really put in the work, do the DD, and use the key levels that we mentioned here. Okay, so please. And guys, I love it. I love Netflix. I love it so much. So number one, what you're looking for here is above this, like the key level here of 624, you're pushing into 642. I mentioned this the other day. And then over 642, I think you push into all-time highs with ease. Personal opinion, what I'm looking at there. Yeah. There's not too much else I need to cover here on Netflix. So as long as you mount above 624, 642, then all-time highs after that, what I'd be watching. Amazon, the big level's been 177. Now, this is where things get a little bit crazy here on Amazon. And I think Amazon's been kind of working us here. Now, Amazon, You're trying to break this little structure. They're announcing so many different AI things that they're trying to do. I don't know if it's hype. I don't even know what to believe anymore. But I believe Amazon, if it stays above 177, you're making the push into 186 with ease. This level here is all very illiquid, so make sure you pay very close attention to that as well. Now, a little bit of a less risky name. Less risky. I forgot to mention them in the beginning of this, but I keep talking about good old Target, right? We love Target. If you're a single man over the age of 25, you should love Target as well. Okay. But I only go there now with my fiance and my son. Back in the day, it was great. Anyways, so you're pushing into 175. That's your 200 SMA on the weekly. I am telling you right now, if Target gets above the 200 SMA, which it should based on their earnings, based on everything happening there, it's a money play. I also said if you get above 168, it's a riskier entry, but it still has a great potential. Target, I'm telling you, above 175, an easy push, I believe, all the way to 200, 205 potentially. I'm telling you right now, it's a monster play. Competitors, Walmart, all-time high. Costco, all-time, basically all-time. I pulled back off all-time highs, but still at that range as well. I love it so much. Target above that 200 SMA, easy push into 200, 200 plus. Again, pay close attention to that one as well. Meta, I mentioned Meta on Twitter, so I'm sorry if you didn't get the opportunity above 494, but this is it's going to push into highs as well. What's happening here with Meta and Microsoft was my big boy play. It's going to be the last one we're going to mention, but Meta is thriving off of what's happening with TikTok. The TikTok ban directly benefits Meta. It is what it is. Now, Microsoft, I've been saying this for a while, and I said Microsoft moves very similar to, it repeats the same pattern. You trade in a clear range for 2 to 3 months. You move up, do it again. You did it again. Above 415, we loved it, but you're breaking above previous all-time highs, you're moving up. I think Microsoft is going to push towards 440, 450 locally with ease. High possibility this opens up at all-time highs. Okay, last things I'll go over to is going to be Bitcoin. Bitcoin, really nice. Above 69.2, you're pushing back into all-time highs. I love it as well. Ethereum, not loving that as much. I think Solana is my favorite crypto that's out there. Solana above 888. It's probably ripping back into highs. AVAX is a close second, so I like those names as well. That's everything we're looking at. If you have questions, comment down below. I'll see you guys on Friday. Have a good one, traders. Remember, trade safe and just money.